Today we're going to be solving quadratics using factoring, and these are actually going to be going into quadratic equations versus functions. We started off in functions, and a function is showing at all points along that path what does this parabola look like. When we are looking at solving, we're looking at finding out when basically the parabola and a line intersect, which could be 2 points, could be at 1 point, or it could be never. It could never intersect the line that you're trying to solve for. So there is a such thing as no solution with some of these, which is really not no solution, is no real solution, and we will go into what unreal solutions are later in the section. And so there's a possibility of 2, 1, or no solutions, no real solutions in these problems. So if I give you the problem of b squared plus 10b equals a negative 21, our first goal is to get everything on the same side. So, unlike when you're solving linear problems where you try to isolate the variable, our goal is to get everybody on the same side. So in this case, that means we need to add 21. Can 21 combine with any of the information that's over on that side? No. And so we will have b squared plus 10b plus 21 equals 0. Always write it in the format where you have your b squared term first, or your variable term squared first, your linear term means with the power of 1, and then the one with no variable. Now we're going to factor. And so using our box, b squared goes here, 21 goes here. And so we're looking for 21b squared. And are we looking for a sum of 10 or a difference of 10? Sum. So what two things can I multiply to get a sum of 10 out of those? 7 and 3. So 7b and 3b. So now when I look to see what can factor out of my first row, what can factor out of those two things? When I look to see what can factor out of my second row, what can factor out of those two things?
7.
And so that leaves me, one of my factors is b plus 7. My second factor, we're going to go down the column. What factors out of that first column? What factors out of the second column? And so my second factor is b plus 3 equals 0. We're going to use something called the zero product theorem. And what that is if I have two things being multiplied to equal 0, and their product is, so we know they're being multiplied to equal 0, what does one of those two things have to be? A 0. Either b plus 7 is 0, or b plus 3 is 0. And so we are going to solve for what it would be for either one of those to be 0. And so if b plus 7 was 0, then b would have to be at negative 7. If b plus 3 was 0, that's only going to occur when it's at negative 3. So those are my two solutions. It's either at negative 7 or negative 3. And so for this next one, we're going to have 3r squared plus 1 equals 4r. Again, we are going to be solving this. We're trying to see where those two are meeting up at. And we're looking for the intersection of basically those two graphs when we would graph them. So first step, move everything to the same side. And we have 3r squared. Is this 4r minus 4r going to go before or after this 1? Before. So now we're going to use our box. Three r squared and a 1. So we're wanting to have a sum or a difference of 4r. This product is positive, so we're wanting a sum. But we're trying to have a goal of a negative 4r. How can we have a sum of a negative, but yet a product that's positive? Both negatives. And so we're left with 1r, negative 1r, minus 3r. Ours are our two factors. So go ahead and fill those into your chart. And so going down this first column, what factors out? 3r. Is the closest or the farthest away 0? Or closest or farthest away, is the farthest away positive?
Yes.
So that's a positive that we factored out. On the next one, what factors out? 1. And the farthest away is negative, so it's negative. So that's first factor is 3r minus 1. The second factor is going to be looking at our rows. 3r squared minus 1r squared are the two things we're trying to factor out between. What do we have left when we factor that? What is factored out? Just an r. Farthest away is positive, so we brought a positive r. On this next set, negative 3r and 1. And farthest away is negative. So r minus 1 equals 0. So now we're going to say each of these equal to 0. Use that zero product rule. So 3r minus 1 equals 0. Or r minus 1 equals 0. We add that 1 over. And we have 3r is equal to 1. Have I solved it yet?
No.
What do I need to do next?
Divide by 3.
Divide by 3. And so that leaves me with r is equal to 1/3. Unless the problem tells you to write it as a decimal, you leave it as a fraction that's reduced. Okay? Then the other one. We're going to add 1 to both sides. And we end up with r is equal to 1. So my two solutions are 1/3 and 1. So this should be familiar. This is exactly how we were finding the zeros or where it crossed the x-axis before. So on this next one, we're going to do two more. We have 4n squared is equal to 12n. So I need to move this 12n over. And we have 4n squared minus 12n equals 0. I could use the box for this one if I wanted to, but it's not the easiest way. When you don't have a c, look to see what can factor out of the two items. So what do they share? An n and a 4, I've heard. So when we factor that out, that leaves us n minus 3 is equal to 0. So 4n equals 0, or n minus 3 equals 0. And if 4n equals 0, what does that mean n has to be? 0, because we divide 0 by 4, it's 0. If I add the 3 to both sides, then that leaves me n is equal to 3. So my two answers are these two guys. And our last problem . What do I do first?
Subtract A from the other one on the same side.
And so that leaves me 35 x squared minus 6x minus 8. Now I'm going to use my box. This time I have to do 35 times 8. And what number does that come up with? Negative 280 x squared. And so we're trying to figure out what factors I can come up with that are going to be a difference of 6. Does anybody have any that will work? 14 and 20? Which is going to be negative? 20, because we want the 6 to be negative. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill in our box. 35x squared, negative 8, 14x, and negative 20x. A lot of people, when they're doing the box, they forget to do the x's, or on those two that we just factored, so be careful in that. So out of 35x squared and negative 20x, what can factor out? 5. Out of 14x and negative 8, what can factor out? And no x. Out of 35x squared and 14x, what can factor out?
7.
Out of negative 20x and negative 8? Negative 4, because the farthest away is negative. And so our two factors are 5x plus 2 and 7x minus 4. And then you're going to say each of those equal to 0 and solve. So 5x plus 2 equals 0 and 7x minus 4 equals 0. And so we are going to move that 2 away, giving us 5x is equal to a negative 2. And divide by 5, giving us x is equal to negative 2/5. On the other one, we're going to start by adding 4 to both sides. 7x is equal to 4. Divide both sides by 4. Or by 7, excuse me. And we end up with x is equal to 4/7. So those are my two solutions. On tonight's homework, you're not going to have any that are going to be where they have no solutions. You are going to have two that are going to go back to kind of what we were doing with the dropping off the side of the building, and you need to find the portions. And so remember, when we had that dropping off the side of the building, in front of your squared term, this was your acceleration. In front of your linear term, this was your speed. And the constant term was your start height. If the acceleration is negative, that means it's falling. If the acceleration is positive, that means it's going up. And so that's going to come into play. It's going to be very similar to the one we did with the dropping off the ball on the side of the building. On the two-story problems, use your graphing calculator to help you do those two. They're kind of tying in what we did with the ball scenarios last week.